कर दिया अनम्यूट कर दिया। रिकॉर्ड कहाँ है और काम कहाँ पे हो रहा है?
Good morning, Raju sir.
Good morning to all of you.
गुड मॉर्निंग।
So first session will start.
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
गुड मॉर्निंग।
So first lesson. Dr. Ganesh, I introduce him for the audience.
Hello, sir.
Sir,
Sir, voice is not very clear.
Ganesh is currently.
The voice volume is very low, sir.
Sir, ask
Dear
all.
participants, please mute your mic and video, then you will receive the better quality. So all
We are not listening anything.
So all the participants, please
ఇక్కడ
mute
కొట్టే
your
సౌండ్
mic
వస్తుంది
and video.
మీరు మాట్లాడేది వాళ్ళకి
The
వినిపిస్తుంది.
audio is not clear.
అది ఇంటూ ఉంటే వినిపించదు. కొట్టండి, ఇంకోసారి కొట్టండి.
Conducted. Please, sir.
ఇది
ఇది
చేయండి. ఇప్పుడు చూడండి.
Sir, voice is not clear.
123 మంది ఉన్నారు.
ఇది నేను కొట్టే మ్యూట్ అయిపోతుంది.
మ్యూట్ లేదు, ఇప్పుడు మ్యూట్ అవుతుంది. కొట్టండి.
Dear participants, don't share anything in the sharing content. Okay. Dear participants, don't share anything. Hello?
Yes, sir.
So, Kalyana Sundaram Raman, don't share anything. Okay, thank you. So now we are going to the first session. Dr. V. Ganesh is currently working as a principal scientist at CSIR Central Electrochemical Research Institute, so-called CSIR SICRI, located in Karaikudi, Tamil Nadu. He has completed his undergraduate degree in chemistry from Ayanadar Janayammal College, Anjab, Sivagasi, and he received a gold medal for securing the first place with a percentage of 91.50. So in addition, he also received gold medal for Tamil and English for securing the first place. He did his master degree in chemistry from the American College, Madurai. Similar to BSc, he also received the gold medals for securing the first place in MSc as well. After completing his master degree, he went to Raman Research Institute, which was inaugurated by our Nobel laureate, Dr. C.V. Raman. So he pursued his PhD degree in chemistry under the guidance of Professor V. Lakshmi Narayanan. Basically, he worked on the subject of electrochemistry and surface chemistry. He completed his PhD degree in the year 2006, and then he moved over to UK, United Kingdom, to do a postdoctoral research at University of Edinburgh in Scotland, United Kingdom. He worked with Professor Junan C. Mark Rivas for a period of 3 years, where his research work is mainly focused on biosensor, bioelectrochemistry, bioelectrocatalysis, and bioinorganic chemistry. Then we came back to India to take up a position of scientist at CSIR, where he is working since 2009. Meanwhile, Dr. Ganesh also went to Canada to avail a visiting researcher fellowship to carry out research work at the University of Manitoba, Winnipeg, Canada, for a period of 6 months, where he worked in the area of nanomaterials for electrocatalysis, liquid crystals, and electrochemistry, with applications of primarily focused on biology and catalysis. Overall, he has about more than 90 publications in internationally reputed journals and contributed 2 book chapters. He is the recipient of prestigious CSIR Young Scientist Award in Chemical Sciences for the year 2014 and Pudhiya Thalamurai Nambikai Natchatram Award for Science and Technology for the year 2015. In addition to SAEST Golden Jubilee Young Scientist Award for the year 2015. He has delivered many invited lectures across India and in other countries like Japan, Canada, and UK. He has completed 10 sponsored projects and currently possesses 4 sponsored projects. Moreover, he also has a teaching experience for more than about 10 years. His research interest is mainly focused on electron transfer studies, electrocatalysis, self-assembled monolayers, microbial fuel cell, scanning probe microscopy, catalysis, electro-analytical chemistry, nanomaterials, liquid crystals, biosensor and bioenergy, and graphene-based materials for biosensing, catalytic and supercapacitor applications. With this brief biodata, now I invite Dr. V. Ganesh to the first session. So now I invite Dr. V. Ganesh.
Okay. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
Let me first thank Dr. Angapan for a kind introduction. Okay. So my request would be, I know you all guys are also teachers, so so my request would be, please don't share or make any presentation of your content. And also, if you could mute your audio, it would be nice so that others can also easily hear my lecture. Okay. So maybe straight away, I'll go and start sharing my presentation. And if you want to ask question anyway in between, you can always ask me. Otherwise, at the end of the talk, you can again ask me questions. Okay. So give me a minute or two so that I'll straight away go and share my presentation. Right. So can you guys able to see the slides? Do you able to see the slides?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You can see it.
Yes, you can see it. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So before
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
yeah. So before I start my lecture, at the outset, I would like to thank our director, Dr. N. Kalaiselvi, for providing an opportunity and to share my knowledge with you through this online webinar. Okay. Also, I would like to thank Dr. S. Angapan for organizing this Jikyasa program for school teachers. And I'm sure he has taken immense effort in arranging lectures and organizing such kind of online workshops. So I would like to place it on record my sincere thanks to him for providing me an opportunity to share my knowledge with you guys. Okay. Yeah, I'm audible, right? Okay. Now, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a lot of examples on why a multidisciplinary approach is essential. Okay. And I will highlight in terms of global issues, what we are currently facing and what we will be facing in the upcoming 10 or 20 years or so. Okay. So that's the whole idea of my lecture. And, CSIR has initiated a program called Jikyasa. Of course, you would have heard in many parts of India now. It provides ample opportunity for school teachers to understand what Indian scientists are involved in doing research. and how can we take this kind of concept to school students so that you can motivate them to pursue science as a career. That's the whole idea of this program. Okay. Now, so before I start my lecture, what I usually do is I used to talk where do I come from, you know, on a very lighter note. I used to tell this to my student. Okay, one Sunday morning I went for a haircut at of course a place called Karaikudi in Tamil Nadu. That's where in fact Sikri is located. The barber asked me question in a typical local language. Sir, where are you working? Okay. Then I said I work in a place called Sikri. Of course, I did not say to him that I am a scientist. I simply said that I work in a place called Sikri. What was his immediate response? He immediately asked me, "Do you guys make atom bomb?" That's the question he posed to me. Then I again asked him in a typical Tamil slang that, how long are you there in Karaikudi? He said he is living here for about past 20 years or so. Okay. Then I realized at that moment that a person who is living at Karaikudi itself doesn't know what Sikri is all about. So from that moment onwards, I decided wherever
video is not.
First sorry, say again. Am I audible? Yeah.
But somebody did not mute the mic.
Disturbance is there, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, audible.
If the participants could mute your mic, it would be very helpful for all of us, so that whatever I give a lecture, it would be audible to all. So please and kindly mute your mic. Okay. So from that moment onwards, I decided it would be nice to talk about where do I come from in the beginning of my lecture. Okay. So I work as a scientist in a place in an institute called Central Electrochemical Research Institute, which is profoundly known as Sikri, which is located in Karaikudi, southeast part of Tamil Nadu. It's very close to Madurai and Rameswaram, I would say. So it is one of the constituent laboratory of CSIR, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. Okay, and we do have 3 different subunits. Of course, the headquarters is located at Karaikudi, and we do have units at Chennai, Rameswaram, and Mandapam. Okay. Now we are roughly about 400 employees, out of which 1/3 are scientists. And even now, Sikri is one and only research institute devoted completely to the field of electrochemical science and technology in India. I'll again repeat my sentence. Even now, Sikri is one and only research institute completely devoted to the field of electrochemical science and technology in India. Even about 2-3 decades ago, among South Asia, among South Asian countries, Sikri was the one and only electrochemical research institute, I would say. Okay, so now recently there are a couple of institutes, they have already started working in Japan as well as in Korea. But in case of Indian scenario, we are the one and only research institute completely devoted to the field of electrochemical science and technology. Okay, sorry, let me go back. So we do work on looking at fundamental aspects of electron transfer reaction. I will try to highlight during the course of my lecture why do you worry about why one has to worry about such electron transfer reaction. Okay, so we do look at fundamental aspects. We design material and develop material at large quantity for the target applications. We do working on developing instruments and device for functional applications. Okay, so apart from this, we do have a good analytical facility. You name any advanced instrument in the field of research, Sikri does have it. Okay. Apart from this, we have a unique course called BTech in Chemical and Electrochemical Engineering, and most of the students who got admitted to this BTech program, after completion, they usually go for MS or PhD abroad. Okay. Now, if you look at the history behind it, the foundation stone was laid in the year 1948 by then Prime Minister Sri Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru ji, and it was declared open in the year 1953 by then President Sri Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. Okay, The man standing right next to him is Dr. Bhatnagar, who was the founder of CSIR, and the man speaking in between these two is a local person who is the greatest philanthropist known to this part of the country. His name is Dr. R.M. Alagappa Chettiar. Okay, even in the year 1950, he has donated 15 lakhs of rupees and 100 acres of land to establish an institute like SICRI. Such a great personality is Dr. R.M. Alagappa Chettiar. Now, I'm sure you guys know who this person is. He is none other than our Nobel laureate, great Nobel laureate, Sir C.V. Raman. Okay, so during the inaugural function, Sir C.V. Raman was there, and he asked such a question: what are these laboratories going to do? Unless otherwise, the workers in these great laboratories feel that it is up to them to do their very best. Otherwise, these laboratories will remain as a giant question mark in the sky. You know, you can imagine, suppose, let's say you want to start a high school to higher secondary, and you are inviting a chief guest for inaugurating the higher secondary session, and suddenly that chief guest ask you a question. You know, there are thousands and thousands of schools exist across India, and why do you want such a higher secondary section? You know, so how do you guys would feel about it? In fact, Cyprians felt the same way in the year 1953. But I am sure if Raman would have been alive today, he would have been more than happy to see what SICRI has contributed both to the national growth as well as to the growth in the field of electrochemical science and technology. Okay, I can list down a lot of achievements of SICRI. You guys know the Bomban Bridge, which is connecting the mainland to the seashore through a bridge, and the corrosion prevention coating to that bridge was provided by SICRI. Okay, and there are many ion selective electrodes like pH electrode, chloride sensing electrode, etc. were developed by SICRI. I can keep on listing down like this. The recent addition to this being Make in India product of fabricating 100 unit cell per day facility at SICRI Chennai unit. Okay, so we are targeting to fabricate 100 unit cell per day at lithium ion fabricating facility at Chennai. Now, of course, you all would know that we do celebrate Science Day in order to commemorate the discovery of Raman. Okay, to commemorate the discovery of Raman effect. And why do I talk about Raman is because if you look at the history, there are many Nobel laureates, okay, are there in India. I'm sure you guys should know about Nobel Prize, right? Do you guys would know about Nobel Prize? Can I ask question in between? Of course, it's just to have a nice interaction rather than other things.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
ma'am.
yes. Yeah. Okay. Now, if you look at the history, Nobel Prize is usually been awarded to 6 different fields. First one is physics, chemistry, physiology or medicine, economics, literature, and the Nobel Prize for Peace. Okay, usually every year during the second week of October, these Nobel Prize winners are announced, and on December 10th, these Nobel awardees are invited to deliver a lecture at a place called Stockholm in Sweden, where the Nobel Prize award ceremony will happen, and these Nobel laureates are are invited to deliver the lecture. Except Nobel Prize for Peace, which is been awarded at a place called Oslo in Norway. Okay, so that's the importance about Nobel Prize. Why I am highlighting the importance about Nobel Prizes, I will tell you a following sentence. You can listen carefully and think about it. Okay, even now, in the field of science, Sir C.V. Raman was the one and only scientist who got Nobel Prize for the work he has done completely in India. I'm sure you would have heard about many Nobel laureates from India. I can show the slides a bit later, but right now, if you look at in the field of science alone, it was just Sir C.V. Raman who has done all the work in India. In fact, he was working in a place called Indian Association of Cultivation of Science in Calcutta. Okay, So that's the point we have to look for. If you look at the even Nobel Prize website, Sir C.V. Raman was the first non-white person to receive the Nobel Prize. Can other participant please mute your mic? Yeah. So Sir C.V. Raman was the first non-white, I should say, first non-white person to receive Nobel Prize in the field of science. And so that's the kind of personality Raman is. So we do celebrate Science Day in order to commemorate the discovery of Raman effect. And he revealed to public the discovery on February 28, 1928. For that, he got Nobel Prize in Physics in 1930. And if you read the history, Raman was so confident that he would get the Nobel Prize in 1929 itself. Even before the announcement, he booked a ship ticket both for himself and for his wife. But unfortunately, he did not receive in the year 1929. I think that time it was Fermi Dirac. Okay, so Fermi Dirac who got Nobel Prize in Physics in 1929, but it was Raman who got ultimately in the year 1930. And this is the quartz spectrograph what Raman used to observe the Raman effect. And even now it is there in a museum at a place called the Raman Research Institute in Bangalore. Okay, and this is a famous lecture he gave on 16th March 1928 and demonstrated the Raman effect to the public. Okay, so now these are all the Nobel Prize winners from India. As you can see, this is the total number of Nobel Prize what Indians have received so far. And the first Indian to get Nobel Prize in any field, in fact, it was Rabindranath Tagore, who got Nobel Prize in the year 1913 for literature. Okay, and in fact, he was the first Indian to get Nobel Prize in any field. Okay, and next after that is Raman, and you can see there are many scientists here: Dr. Hargobind Khorana, Dr. S. Chandrasekhar, Dr. Venkatraman Ramakrishnan. Okay, so if you look at the science alone, although these people, we claim that as Indian, they worked mostly in abroad, and during the course of their research, they spend most of their time in abroad. So that's why I stated in the beginning that Raman was the one and only scientist who got Nobel Prize for the work he has done completely in India. Okay, so of course, in other fields like economics and peace, we do have Nobel laureates like Dr. Amartya Sen, Dr. Abhijit Banerjee, and now even in the case of peace, we also had Kailash Satyarthi, who received the Nobel Prize in the year 2014. Okay, so that's the kind of motto you can transmit this to your student, so that they can take up science as a career to build up their research. Okay. Of course, I think Dr. Rangappan has read out my biodata. I would just like to say that basically I am a chemist. Though I am a chemist, I do take concepts from material science, biology and physics to come up with sensors and devices, mainly for energy and environmental applications and for biomedical applications. Okay. So how am I going to structure my lecture is, I don't talk deep into science. Rather, I would like to give you an overview of why do we have to worry about doing research. Okay, I will give you typical examples in the field of biosensors and maybe energy related field. Okay, now during the course of my lecture, I would also like to highlight why do we have to worry about electron transfer reaction, and how do you modulate such electron transfer reaction to bring about applications mainly in the field of sensors, healthcare, diagnostics, and energy as a whole. Okay, now let me ask a simple question. Why do you guys think that scientists are involved in doing research? Your answer would be just that we also got a job. It is not part of we should consider that as a job. We are making an effort to tackle the global issues, what we are facing currently and what we will be facing in the upcoming years. Okay, if you look at this slide here, I have listed down the humanity's top 10 problems which we will face in the upcoming 50 years or so. Okay. If you look at this list, you can see we have energy, water, food, environment, poverty, terrorism and war, disease, education, democracy, population, etc. I can give examples for each of these to say that this is going to be a big problem in the upcoming years or so. Let us take an example for energy. Okay, if you look at about 2 decades ago, let's say when I was a kid, please, I mean, if you could mute, then you would be able to listen to me very clearly. Okay, so now about 2 decades ago, if you look at it, we did not had any mobile phone. Okay, so I remember when I was a student, when I came to do PhD at Bangalore, I used to ring my parents through an STD booth. You know, now such kind of jobs never exist, I guess. Okay, so thanks to a revolution in technology, now each and everyone is having a mobile phone. Okay, I don't know whether you guys remember, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, 2014 or 15, in Tamil Nadu alone, we had roughly 14 to 15 hours of power cut. I don't know whether you remember. Okay, about 4 or 5 years ago in Tamil Nadu alone, we had about 14 to 15 hours of power cut. Okay, apart from this, you can also think about like India is going to be digitalized. We have completely moved from a classical blackboard based teaching to virtual online mode of teaching now, right? So everyone uses laptop, mobile phone, video conferencing facility, so many softwares to have a online teaching tool, etc. Correct? So we have in fact digitalized. Imagine when you are giving a lecture and suddenly your battery backup failed. So how do you feel about it? Okay, so that's the kind of energy crisis we would be facing. So I'm highlighting only in terms of energy storage or devices, not just energy storage. Think about transport, for example. Okay, you can take any house in the village now. There are no houses exist in villages without the following 3 items: one mobile phone, second TV, and third would be your two-wheeler. You know, without these 3 things, there is no house in the village. Oops. Okay, see, if someone is making a presentation, then I cannot again share. Okay, so please don't make any presentation. I'll have to go back and start loading my slide again. Just give me a minute. Okay, my slides are visible now, right? My slides are visible now.
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, madam. Yes, ma'am.
I kindly request again all the participants, please don't make any presentation or share your content. Okay. Now.
Yes, sir. Now it is visible.
So I was trying to highlight the aspect of top 10 problems which we will face in the upcoming 50 years or so. Okay. Since I'm going to talk mostly about sensors related healthcare diagnostics, I would also like to give an example for disease. Okay. Now, in fact, I don't even have to talk about disease. You know what is happening all over the globe now. Let's say again, when I was kid about 2 decades ago, if I get a fever or so, my father used to take me to a single doctor. Okay, so that the single doctor would give me an injection or a tablet or a tonic. The next day I would feel okay and take my bat and start playing cricket, you know, and start doing my regular activities. But if you go to a doctor now with a fever, you know what are all the questions you need to face? Of course, it is not to criticize anyone. It is just for us to understand the concept so that how do we improve such system? Okay, so that's why I'm giving examples like that. If you go to a doctor now, the first question would be, sir, did you check your blood pressure? Did you check your sugar? Or why don't you take an ECG and see whether you are normal? Okay, so probably you would have gone just to get a tablet for a fever, but you need to face such question. And we do have many diseases now. Probably 2-3 decades ago, we might had what is called jaundice, for example, or cholera, for example. Now we do have many diseases. I don't know where do they, naming ceremony happens for these diseases. We do call this as chikungunya, coronavirus, Nipah, many diseases we do get. So that is also going to be a big problem which we will face in the upcoming 50 years or so. Apart from this, of course, there are examples I can cite like education, democracy, etc. But I don't want to touch upon for today. Okay. So apart from this, think about it. The global population in the year 2012 was estimated to be 6 billion. And it is expected to grow roughly twice by the year 2050. Okay. So how are you going to accommodate them, all these people in the globe, provide them, let's say, good drinking water, green energy for them to live, clean environment, etc., and good healthcare diagnostics? How do we provide solution to these problems? The one and only way we can provide solution to these problems is through proper science and technology, is through addressing and providing solutions to this issue through science and technology. Okay. Now, let's take an example. Let's say in case of healthcare diagnostics, I do mention that there are many diseases which prevail in the society. So how do you go about finding solution to this disease? Okay. There are various diseases present in society. In order to find a diagnostic tool, first you need to identify what is the root cause for this disease. Then you understand the chem bio problem. I'll give you a specific example for understanding this chemistry bio problem. Okay. And you can investigate what is the bioorganism involved in this. You come up with a diagnostic, provide an approach that could target the disease, and you testify your hypothesis so that ultimately you can come up with what is called a health diagnostic tool. Okay. So again, the one and only way we can come up with solution to this problem is through science and technology. I stress not just science alone, not just technology alone. Both has to, both have to go hand in hand, so that science and technology as a whole can provide solution to this problem. Now, I do mention about this understanding chemistry bio interface. Okay, how do we understand this? Let me ask a series of questions. You guys don't have to answer, just think about it. Okay. Now, let's say we all have nice good food as dinner. Okay, and we go to bed in the night. Okay. Then in the morning you wake up. Who asked us to wake up? Maybe you would have kept an alarm or disturbance from kids, daughter, brother, sister, wife, husbands, etc. You do get up in the morning, let's assume, and you get ready, and within an hour or two you feel hungry, right? So why do you feel hungry? Right? Let's say we take some good food, and after food we come to a bus stop. Now anyway, I hope they started running the buses again, so we can again travel, I guess, right? So you do go to a bus stop to catch a bus to go to your school or college. Okay. And suddenly when you look at someone, you feel very happy, and when you look at someone else, you feel very much irritated, right? So why do all these things happen? Okay, you would say all these things happen because of biochemical reaction which occurs in our body, right? All these things happen because of biochemical reaction which occurs in our body. I would go one step ahead and say that all these things happen because of electron transfer reaction which occurs in our body. When I say biochemical reaction, there could be biomolecules that can undergo oxidation or reduction, right? So the moment oxidation or reduction occurs, I can correlate directly with the redox reaction, meaning I can correlate directly with the electron transfer reaction. Okay, so that's a kind of in a very broad way I was trying to explain why understanding chemistry bio interface becomes very, very critical. Now, let me give one more example. Okay, let's say, of course, you guys have probably aged, but let's think about your students. Okay, your students when they play during the break, what do they take? They take glucose. Okay, as an energy drink, right? Why do they take glucose? They take glucose because it provides instantaneous energy. Okay, it provides instantaneous energy. The moment glucose is taken up by the body, of course, when glucose undergoes completely oxidation, it gives 6 CO2 plus 12 H2O plus energy in terms of ATP release, right? So it's an exothermic reaction. That is the kind of energy we talk about. And this reaction is spontaneous. Okay, what do I mean by spontaneous? Delta G of that reaction is negative. I hope you know what do I mean by delta G, right? It gives free energy. Free energy of the reaction is negative, so delta G is negative. And that's why you get this instantaneous energy when you consume glucose. Now, typical other example for a multidisciplinary device that came into market because of a chemistry bio interface understanding issue is glucometer, which is available in the market, right? You guys have heard about the glucometer to measure the level of glucose present in our blood sample, correct? So how does that meter work? That meter is a typical example of a device developed through a multidisciplinary research approach. Now, how does the device work? You can prick your finger, take a drop of blood, put it on a disposable flexible electrode. What do they provide? So the moment you put a drop of your blood on the electrode, you insert that strip into the device would display a reading. Now, how does that work? The disposable strip has an enzyme called glucose oxidase. And so you guys know what is an enzyme what an enzyme is. Enzyme is very specific. The enzyme glucose oxidase oxidizes glucose to gluconic acid and hydrogen peroxide. Okay, specifically oxidizes glucose to gluconic acid and hydrogen peroxide. So that the moment you the moment you insert the electrode into the device is nothing but an electrochemical instrument which will electrochemically either oxidize or reduce how much hydrogen peroxide is produced, so that you can correlate with the amount of glucose present in your blood serum sample. That is the typical example of a device that has been developed through multidisciplinary approach. Okay, so now what do I do is I'll spend maybe another 5-10 minutes on a classical book-based definition of what sensor is all about and why chemistry, or rather I would be very specific now in terms of like why electrochemistry is such an important and powerful technique. Okay? Then I will go on and talk about other examples and what we developed in our laboratory. Okay, now according to classical book-based definition, sensor is nothing but a device which converts either physical or chemical parameter into a measurable electrical signal. Okay, in general it consists of sensing element, transducer and connected electronics. As you can see, like what we discussed a while ago about this glucometer, the disposable strip is nothing but your sensing element, and the transducer is nothing but your enzymatic reaction, so that the reaction is converted to a measurable electrical or electrochemical signal, and the connected electronics would measure that signal, right? Now, this is a typical flow chart of a chemical sensor. You can pass through a filter through a recognition site, so that will pick up either the change in ions or ionic concentration or electrons or change in temperature, change in intensity of the light or polarization of the light, etc. So that the transducer would pick up those changes and convert into a measurable
मेरा गाड़ी का 2-3 कंपनी का चेक करो ना किसका कम है इंश्योरेंस इस बार यहीं से कराएं.
and convert into a measurable electrical signal to electronics.
30 अक्टूबर है लेकिन अब तो सितंबर से
Can you please mute
15
your mic?
हाँ
Others need to mute their mics, please.
Hello sir, mute your mic. आप बात करने से बाद में बात कीजिए.
Sir, please mute the mic, sir.
Lecture
We
is
are not
going on.
listening.
That's
मतलब
what.
15 तारीख
Who
के
is
बाद
that
से कर
fellow?
रहे हैं अक्टूबर में
Okay, okay.
ना,
Thank you. Thanks for your effort, yeah.
हाँ इसलिए ना यहाँ से नहीं होगा तो फिर हमको वहाँ फरीदाबाद कागज देंगे
भाई साहब, could you please mute your mic?
I'm
आप
sorry,
आपको
कोई नहीं।
mic को
हाँ।
mute करें. Okay.
मैडम को और ऐसे ही
Electrochemical good. Okay, you muted. No problem. Now, you guys can listen to me, right? Hello. I'm
Yes,
audible?
yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes,
I'll
sir.
continue.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. आते एक मिनट.
Now,
ये बोल रहे सब लोग कि आपको एयर नहीं कराया अभी तक.
okay. Now, electrochemical sensor is a device that interacts either chemically or electrochemically with an analyte, but it produces signal that is monitored using electrochemistry. That's a typical definition of an electrochemical sensor. Now, we can use very simple techniques like potentiometry, amperometry, or conductometry. For example, in case of potentiometry, you can measure directly the difference in potential and correlate with the concentration of the analyte.
इन क्यों नहीं करा रहे ये लोग?
Bicep, I think someone is keep on talking. I'm not sure who is the person. If can identify and mute, that would be very helpful. Okay. Not only to me, of course, to the participants, I guess. Thank you. Now, so that's the potentiometry technique. You would have heard about something called a Nernst equation, which governs the potentiometry. Now, in case of amperometry, what you do is you measure the current at a fixed potential and correlate with the concentration of the analyte. The glucometer, what I mentioned a while ago, is a typical example for a device which works based on the principle of amperometry. On the other hand, in case of conductometry, one can measure either change in resistance or conductance or conductivity and correlate directly with the concentration of the analyte. So these are all some of the very simple techniques through which one can develop an electrochemical sensor. Here, I have shown a typical characteristic of a sensor should have. For example, the glucometer, again what I talked about, I use a single drop of blood to measure the concentration, right? So I don't need to give a 5 ml, 10 ml or 100 ml of blood to know the concentration of single analyte. So the sensor should have an ability to measure the analyte using a very small volume of the sample. It should be selective and specific. What do I mean by that? If I want to know about glucose, the glucometer should give me a reading about glucose alone. It should not talk about fructose, sucrose, or lactate, for example. Okay, and the response time should be quick, and if it comes in handy, if it is disposable, reusable, etc. So these are all some of the typical characteristic of a sensor. Now, in case of biosensor, we can use directly enzyme or antibody or microorganism or even a whole cell as a molecular recognizing element. Okay, so that it can pick up a change in, let's say, concentration of the active species, or it can pick up a change in pH, temperature, polarization of light, or intensity change in light, or even mass change it can measure. Okay, so depends upon the transducer signal. You can categorize the sensors into different category like a thermistor, photon conductor, piezoelectric device, etc. And remember, all these devices would give ultimately an electrical signal as an output. Now, as I mentioned that we do work on electrochemistry as a major subject, I would spend maybe another 5 minutes to highlight why electrochemistry is such an important subject. Okay. I already talked about the importance of understanding electron transfer reaction. Okay, getting up in the morning, feeling hungry, expressing our emotion, etc. So a study which deals with electron transfer reaction, understanding electron transfer reaction at interface, is nothing but your electrochemistry. In general, electrochemistry deals with two different kinds of reaction. One in which voltage is applied to drive a chemical reaction, and in the other case where voltage is generated because of an inbuilt chemical reaction. Okay, let's take an example for these two so that we can understand the system better. Let's say we do have wall clock in our houses or in our office premises, etc. The moment clock stops, what do? We simply change the battery, correct? And the moment you change the battery, the clock starts working. Why does it happen? That is because the inbuilt redox reaction associated with the battery provides an voltage output, and that voltage is used to drive the working of a wall clock. Okay, so that comes under the first category. In this category, delta G of that material is negative. What do I mean by delta G? Gibbs free energy of the reaction is negative, and that's why the reaction is spontaneous. Okay. Now in the other case, where voltage is applied to drive a chemical reaction. Okay, what do I mean by that? Let's say, for example, fuel cell. You guys should have, you guys should have heard news or read in newspaper that we can use water as a fuel to drive vehicle. Is it really possible to drive vehicle with water? Okay, maybe yes, ma'am. I will. Yeah, we can discuss that in later part of this. Yes. How about thermodynamics of that reaction? On a very joke side, I was giving a lecture like this in a college, and I told that yes, to the students, can we drive vehicle with water? And suddenly one student got up and said, yes sir, we can drive vehicle with water. My father does, my uncle does, all these people does. Then I have to tell him that it is not the drink what you think of. It is, I'm talking about a water. Okay, so now how about thermodynamic of water splitting reaction? Water can be split into hydrogen and oxygen, right? And thermodynamically this reaction is not allowed. What do I mean by that? Delta G of that reaction is positive. Okay, so thermodynamically, which is not allowed, non-spontaneous reaction. But one can switch the thermodynamics by applying a potential so that you tune delta G from a spontaneous, from positive to negative, meaning non-spontaneous to spontaneous reaction. So there is an equation you guys have heard about, what is called this delta G is minus NFE, which is a Gibbs free energy equation. In this equation, N is number of electrons, F is Faraday's constant, so N and F are constant. The only for a given process, okay, the only variable parameter is E, so that when you apply the potential, you can tune delta G from a completely positive to negative and vice versa. That's the case here in the first case, where when you apply 1.23 volt versus a reference electrode, you can split water into hydrogen and oxygen so that both could be used as a fuel. So that's also a kind of reaction which comes under the category where voltage is applied to drive a chemical reaction. Now, in electrochemistry, we always talk about two parameters, right? One is potential and the other one is current. Let me spend a minute or two just to tell you where does this originates from. Okay, the potential originates because of the spontaneous double layer which is established at the electrode-electrolyte interface. Let's say you take any conducting rod and dip into an electrolyte. At the solid-liquid interface, electrode-electrolyte interface, there is a typical layer of separation of charges established at the interface which is spontaneous. In fact, this is very similar to what is called a parallel plate capacitor model, what you would have studied in, what probably now you may be teaching in higher standards, 11th or 12th, right? Parallel plate capacitor model. So the origin of capacitance is related to potential through an equation called C is equal to Q by E. Okay, so that's where the potential originates from electrochemistry. Now, you can also see that it is not possible to measure potential of a single interface. In order to measure this potential, we do use what is called a reference electrode, so that we can measure the potential difference between these two interfaces. And that is called actually the potential in electrochemistry. Now, where does the current come from? Okay, the current come from different modes of mass transfer due to electron transfer reaction. But I can go down to explain to you that current comes because of the perturbation or deviation from equilibrium. Okay, you would have also studied what is called the Le-Chatelier principle, right? What does the Le-Chatelier principle tells about? It actually talks about equilibrium perturbation. The scientific term for disturbance is called perturbation. Okay. Now why do you worry about equilibrium? I used to tell a story this whenever I take classes for our students. You can define equilibrium like this. Rate of forward reaction is exactly equal to rate of reverse, and there is no mass change between forward and reverse reaction. Delta G is 0, and in case of electrochemistry, delta I is also 0. There is no current change between forward and reverse reaction. Unless otherwise the system satisfies all these three conditions, you cannot term the system is at equilibrium. Now, why do I worry about equilibrium? Why do I worry about equilibrium? Let's say, let's again discuss with a small story. Then I will come back to the lecture again. Okay. Let's assume that a student has got a gold medal for securing first place in the school or studies. Okay. Let's assume that student goes up to the stage, receives the medal, comes to the other end of the stage. Okay. Suddenly, some friends of his student go to that person and start talking. Okay. So how many of you feel that student would exhibit his or her normal properties or normal qualities at that moment? I hope you understand my question, right? The student goes to the stage, receives the medal, comes to the other end of the stage. Suddenly, some of his or her friends go and talk to that person. And how many of you feel that person would exhibit his or her normal qualities, which is very unique, right? Most of them would feel at that moment that they would be in the excited state, so they will feel that they are the one and only person at that moment that they know the concept very well. It may not be true. Okay, so that's a kind of excited state. But on the other hand, the equilibrium state is like a regular day where student come to the class regularly. He or she may be good or obedient student, does the homework properly, and he or she may be very friendly with his friends, etc. When does that student exhibit real characteristic? At regular day coming to schools, right? Equilibrium condition. So meaning under equilibrium state, the system exhibits its real characteristics. That's the idea. Okay. Now, so coming back to Le-Chatelier principle, the origin of potential at the interface due to this double layer structure is a kind of perturbation to the system. And in order to get rid of that perturbation, the system responds, and that response is nothing but your current to satisfy the Le-Chatelier principle. When a stress is applied, the equilibrium will shift in such a way that it will nullify the stress. It will get rid of the stress. Okay. So that's the kind of concept, of course, I want to project for electrochemistry. The important point is, the typical thickness of this double layer interface is of the order of nanometer level distance, right? Can we look at a nanometer level distance with our naked eye? The answer is no. Okay. of course, I don't want to go into that topic. That itself is a good science we can understand. But right now, all the electrochemical reaction occurred within this nanometer level separation. That's why when you apply even about, let's say, 100 millivolt within 1 nanometer, the electric field felt at this interface is very high. 100 millivolt divided by 1 nanometer. So you would get about 100 into 10 power 6 volt per meter, 100 million volt per meter, which is humongous. That's why many chemical reactions which are not possible through normal chemical route, we can carry out through such kind of electrochemical reaction. That's the powerful nature of electrochemistry. Okay, so this is the classical equation what we would have studied. For a reaction to undergo a chemical reaction, it has to cross an energy barrier and undergoes reaction to give you product. And usually you reduce this energy barrier, activation energy barrier, by applying temperature, pressure, or using a catalyst, etc. But in case of electrochemistry, apart from these things, we can also use either current or potential to tune the activation energy barrier through this Gibbs free energy equation. That's the advantage of electrochemistry. Now, why I saw this slide is because, although I am a chemist, I talked about glucometer, which is available in the market, but it is easy to fabricate to have a system like electrochemical workstation, like a potentiostat or galvanostat. Okay, in electrochemistry, what do? You apply a potential and measure the current. So we can use 2 op-amps, meaning operational amplifier, or 2 ICs, 2 integrated circuits, where in the first case you need to have what is called a voltage follower circuit. Physics people would know what do I mean by this voltage follower circuit, right? Whatever the voltage you apply, the electrode should feel that is the voltage you apply. So by using an operational amplifier in terms of voltage follower circuit, you can apply the voltage, and due to electron transfer reactions which occur in interface, that could lead to change in voltages, let's assume. And if you pass that voltage through a resistor, you would get a current value. So current voltage converter we can use at as the other IC, so that you can construct a small potentiostat or galvanostat. Okay, in fact, this is a kind of circuit I made during my PhD. This is my first project, of course. As I mentioned, I am a chemist, but my guide asked me to fabricate a potentiostat on a breadboard and demonstrate how do you do an electrochemical experiment, which is a very unique experience for me. Of course, I know time is running out, so I don't go into details of some of the concepts in electrochemistry, but except to say, sorry, so except to, someone wants to ask something. Hello, yeah. Now, electrochemistry, as I mentioned, it is a powerful technique. So we do have techniques so that you can understand the system at equilibrium, near to equilibrium, and far away from equilibrium. Okay, so I mentioned why understanding about equilibrium is critical, because at equilibrium only the system exhibits its real characteristic. One can understand the behavior of an interface at equilibrium. Having said that, you can deviate from equilibrium to a very near to equilibrium system or far away from equilibrium system. Under all conditions, these techniques could be used to understand the system in a much better way. Now, I will talk about my area of research, like what our group is focused on developing the healthcare diagnostics. Okay, so during this kind of work, what we did was we introduced what are called the nanoparticles. Probably you guys should have heard about it. In a classical band theory based system, we describe metal has overlapping conductance and valence band, and in case of semiconductors, the band, there is a definite band gap, and you can tune the band gap by applying a temperature, pressure, etc. And in case of insulator, the band gap is very large, right? So in case of metal, if you take such kind of bands and keep on reducing the size of that metal from a bulk to a nanoparticle level, what you would end up is, you would end up with a quantized energy level of the system. What do I mean by that? When you keep on reducing, you can get a single energy level, single energy state of such nanoparticle. What's the advantage? Well, if you go on reducing such kind of size of the metal, you would end up with what is called quantum dots, which exist because of quantum confinement effect. What do I mean by quantum confinement effect? The size of the quantum dots are much smaller than the Bohr exciton radius. Okay, so that's how we define quantum dot. Why this nanoparticle and quantum dots are essential is because that exhibits many interesting properties, right? It can fluoresce, it can emit phosphorescence, it can give various colors, it can provide a high surface area, meaning higher surface to volume ratio, so that you can bring in many advantages by go on reducing from the bulk to nanoparticles and in turn to quantum dots. And now there is another concept called even clusters, magic clusters. You can have only 2 or 3 nanoparticles clustered them together so that you can tune the color of the emission, etc. So this is the kind of advantage one would have by introducing nanoparticles or quantum dot. Okay, maybe I will take another 10 minutes or so that I will highlight what our research work is focused on. Okay. We started working on mainly bio-related aspect by using the self-assembled monolayer as an electrode substrate. Okay, this is very easy to prepare. You take a electrode like gold, copper, silver, etc. You introduce a long aliphatic thiol chain molecule so that the moment you dig the electrode into the solution, there is a spontaneous formation of chemical bond between this thiolate and gold electrode, so that this molecule should go and anchor on the electrode surface. Okay, and with respect to time, these molecules organize among themselves to form a well organized structured layer. What is the advantage of this well organized structured layer? You can able to investigate the electron transfer reaction. It forms appropriate framework for such studies. For example, if you have a similar length of molecule for aliphatic and aromatic moiety, as you can see that the aromatic moiety enhance the electron transfer reaction roughly 1000 times compared to the similar length of aliphatic. Of course, this is due to distributed bielectron. That is about fundamental aspect. Once you tune this electron transfer reaction, we can even develop what are called biomimic catalysis. Okay, here we demonstrated what is called a cytochrome C oxidase model, which in fact catalyzes oxygen reduction to water. You can mimic the function. You can mimic the enzymatic structure and function on the electrode surface so that you can understand the behavior better. Now, in this series, I would like to talk about one among many sensors what we developed in our lab. This is an important sensor for what is called a lipopolysaccharide. What do I mean by lipopolysaccharides? This is a potent stimulant of human immune response system. What do I mean by that? Let's say some person met with an accident, God's grace, we immediately take him to ICU, intensive care unit, and we would like to know whether the patient would survive or not. So this molecule would provide information about our immune response, okay, whether we can survive or not. That's the kind of information one would get by analyzing this molecule. Beyond certain concentration, initially it leads to what is called organ failure, and ultimately it leads to a septic shock, cell poisoning of the body, and the patient would die if he or she reaches this stage. But if you look at the structure of the molecule, I know I'm not again going into detail of it, but you just look at the overall structure. It is like a pattern. You have a high a long aliphatic chain, you have sugar moieties, you have functional groups one can target. So what we did was, using that monolayer and by employing hydrophobic interaction between the aliphatic chains, we anchored this molecule on the electrode surface, and we developed a receptor for each of these functionalities. You know, and when these receptors go and bind to specific part of the molecule, that introduce an electrostatic attraction. In fact, this molecule is highly toxic because of the higher negative charge which is present on the surface. Okay, so when these receptors goes and bind to each of this binding moiety, that will reduce that negative charge, so that you can monitor the charge based interaction by simply measuring the resistance or impedance. Okay, so in a way, we come up with what is called a complementary pattern based recognition receptor. You know, you can assume this molecule as a pattern which are complementary to each other, and we developed a receptor for each of these patterns. So that's the kind of sensor we come up with. Not just metal, you can also work on employing semiconductor electrodes also to tune the electron transfer reaction. Okay, and when you introduce nanoparticle, as I mentioned just a while ago, we can introduce either gold nanoparticles or quantum dots like graphene with different light emitting color like blue, yellow, green, etc. You can bring in many advantages. Okay, now among the many different nanostructured material we employed, like nanoparticles, nanostars, etc., I would like to spend a minute or two to come up to talk about why this nanostars is very good. You know, it is very easy to prepare by saying that you can simply mix water and a surfactant. You know what surfactant is all about, right? For example, sodium dioxide sulfate, cetyl trimethyl ammonium bromide. By cleverly choosing the ratio between this water and the surfactant mixture, you can get a variety of structures like micelle, reverse micelle, hexagonal, liquid crystalline phase, etc. Liquid crystals is one of the exciting area. In fact, I would like to say one point here. We normally feel that Indians are not contributing enough to the growth of science, right? My answer to that question would be no. There are many Indians, in fact, who also made good contribution to the growth of science as well. In fact, this liquid crystal, the discovery is very, very unique. Dr. S. Chandrasekharan, who got a Nobel Prize for Physics in the year 1970s, who has proposed the discovery of this liquid crystal, which is in between matter. Like, we know what is solid, we know what is liquid, and this liquid crystals are in between. What do I mean by that? They have a long range orientational order, but there is no positional order in liquid crystals. Okay. Now, we used one such kind of liquid crystals to prepare fascinating nanostructures like this nanostar. You can see that in some cases the length of the arm is higher, longer and sharper, and in some cases the core is bigger. Okay, so by tuning such kind of structure, you can able to get many interesting properties like a Raman signal you can enhance. This is called a surface enhanced Raman scattering signal. Okay, so by introducing such kind of thing, you can able to develop many enzymatic sensor. In this series, starting from metal, semiconductor, we moved into a next regime, what is called the flexible and disposable electrode. What I talked about glucometer in the beginning of my lecture, right? When I was a student, I remember my teachers and lecturers in college, they used to take classes through what is called OHP sheet, overhead projector sheet. That is nothing but a plastic sheet. What we did was, we adopted a simple electrode deposition method, so that by cleverly choosing the metal like copper or nickel, we can bring about a sensor strip. Okay, we demonstrated by plating such kind of system, you can develop sensor for glucose, etc. A slight modification in the strategy you can come up with such kind of disposable and flexible sensor strip for even pesticide detection. I can tell you that in fact some of the school students, they come for this GKS training program for them to get exposed to the field of research. We used to provide such kind of simple approach, right? You can take a plastic sheet just to do an electrode deposition, and by cleverly tuning the structure, when you dip that into a pesticide solution, either the color can change so that the student can visibly see that they can develop an optical probe based sensor. So such kind of course, research wise, if we look at it, we can always validate our hypothesis with a different diagnostic tool and come up with a sensor for such kind of practical applications. Okay. So I will skip some of the slide so that I will wind up in about 5 or 10 minutes. One of the simple concept what we come up is with, let's say we have studied about this electrolysis process, right? You simply dip an anode and cathode and use an electrolyte, perform an electrolysis. By cleverly choosing the time duration of the electrolysis process and by introducing reducing agent, you can get simultaneously the fluorescent liquids, like different color emitting liquids. These are all called carbon quantum dots, and as a precipitate, when you get which is set at the bottom, those are nothing but a graphene oxide sheet based system. What do we do with that? We can employ such kind of nanoparticles for bioimaging application. You can directly target the disease, or rather a microbe, specifically bacteria or enzyme, etc. And this kind of layered structure like graphene oxide, graphene, etc. could also be used for energy storage applications. Okay. Now I can keep on talking like this, like we have developed many such fluorescent system, and by playing with the pH of the solution, you can change the emission color to rosy red in acidic and green in case of alkaline, etc. So that you can employ such kind of system for the detection of enzymes, amino acids, etc. Now, the one aspect what I highlighted is about healthcare diagnostic. The other one is water splitting reaction. Of course, you will have a detailed talk about this water splitting by one of our colleagues during the later part of the program. But here what I want to highlight is, by doing a simple electrolysis process, you can get a beautiful nanostructured tube, porous tube. As a honeycomb like structure you can get. For example, you can see the porosity, length and the ripples of the tubes could be tuned by doing a simple electrolysis process. Okay. Here we employed anodization. We use titanium based substrate as anode and platinum as a cathode, so that when you apply a constant current density, you can tune the porosity. This could be finally be used as an electrocatalyst to split water into hydrogen and oxygen, and we can enhance this water splitting, in turn the energy conversion devices by employing such electrode. Now maybe I'll take another 5 minutes and wind up my talk. Okay. The other area what our group is focused, and it could be very easy to do at the school level, is microbial fuel cell. Okay. What do I mean by microbial fuel cell, right? In case of normal fuel cells, we know that water is being split into hydrogen and oxygen, so that the water oxidation will happen at anode, where we use materials as electrocatalyst. Instead, in case of microbial fuel cells, what we do is we use microbes as a catalyst in anode chamber, so that you can use waste like industrial waste, food waste, etc. so that the microbes consume that food waste and produce energy. In order to survive, the microbes will eat such kind of food waste. During this metabolic process, they release electrons. That electrons could flow through the external circuit, so that you would get the current out of it. We have, of course, I don't want to go into detail of this, rather saying that you can basically collect a food waste or something and allow the microbe to grow on the electrode surface. So initially there won't be any current flow, so that you allow some time for the microbes to anchor and grow on the electrode surface. And after that, when you add a food source, you would see there is a sudden shoot up in the current value, okay, and it retains over the period of time, and after some time you would see the current again falls down. So that could be due to two reasons: either the microbe is dead, or it may not have sufficient food to get the energy out of it. I can tell you, when you introduce the food again, you would again come back to the initial current value, so that the microbe is alive. What it needs is only the food to survive. So like this, you can assemble a small cell. A single cell would give roughly about 0.6 volt. When you connect to two cells in series, you would get 1.2 volt, which is sufficient enough to run a wall clock or digital calculators, etc. Not just food waste, of course, we can also use alcohols, starch based system, etc. because when it undergoes fermentation, it produces more amount of alcohol, and that alcohol could be used by the microbes to produce energy out of it. So that's the kind of concept we do work on, like bad wine makes good energy out of it. Now, these are all some of the microbial fuel cell assemblies what we have fabricated in our lab. Now, in this series, if you look at it, now we do work on developing flexible sensor platform for healthcare diagnostic. What do I mean by that? Now, I was talking about developing sensor using blood as an analyte, right? Rather than blood, we can use sweat also as an analyte to understand the healthcare diagnostic of a person. What do I, when I talk about science behind the sweating, which is scientifically called as perspiration, which is very interesting. Under two conditions, a person would normally sweat. One, there is a temperature different thermal gradient, and the other one is due to emotional changes. Okay, what do I mean by that? Suddenly you go and announce to your student in a class that today there is going to be a surprise test. Then you would realize that some of the students would start sweating. And if someone comes and proposes to you, or you go and attend an interview suddenly, normally people sweat. You would have seen such kind of scenario. But interestingly, if you look at it, during this temperature difference, our entire body sweats. But during emotional changes, there are places like forehead, forearm, and this arm. These are the areas which will sweat. And the constituents of the sweat are also different under these circumstances. It has lactate, urea, glucose, chloride, etc. So that you can develop sensor for these ions using such kind of array electrode, so that on a single platform you can develop a multi-analyte detection system. In fact, that's the kind of analysis we do work on. Where it could be used? Well, such kind of smart sensors could be used both in defense and sports arena. In case of sports, I'm sure you guys would be watching, Olympic, and normally people used to take drugs. When I say drug, there are so many news which is coming up nowadays, and you guys would strike that, right? So in order to check whether the athlete has taken any, unusual chemical or drug, etc., what do? Just before the start of the race, they collect their urine or blood sample, and after the end of the race, again they collect that urine or blood sample. Okay. Now, normally the result would come after like 2 years, 3 years, etc. By then the gold medal winner would have got lot of sponsorship, lot of advertisement. He or she would have earned crores of rupees, and after 3 years, what's the point of telling them that you have taken drugs, so we want to strip off your medal? There is no use. That person would be happy to remove the medal and give it to you. It's not good. Rather, imagine they would wear of course, fabrics and clothes while they run. So we can impregnate, we can immobilize such kind of sensors onto their fabric so that when they run itself, we can analyze, they generate sweat. From the sweat, you can able to analyze many constituents present in the sweat sample, and you can predict and analyze and confirm whether the person has taken drug or not, you know. So that's the kind of application I would like to project. Finally, to conclude, of course, we may be good in either one or two subjects, but in order to tackle the global issues, what I highlighted in the beginning of my lecture, one has to take a multidisciplinary approach. Not just physicists or chemists or engineers alone would solve the problem. We need to go hand in hand so that you can take concepts from material chemistry, biology, chemistry, physics, etc. to come up with ultimately smart material and smart sensing system. What do I mean by that? You know, let's say you guys are listening to me from the morning, let's say about 11:30 onwards. So you feel like this, what is this guy Ganesh comes and talks about you know, Nobel Prize, sensor, electrochemistry, etc. You get bored of my talk, okay? So you slowly lean on to your chair or sofa so that the chair understands that you are not interested in listening to me, and it converts into sofa so that you can sleep aramse. Okay, comfortably you can sleep. That's the kind of smart material we talk about. And other smart sensing is like, you know, remember, the chair can also prick you and say that, come on, this guy, you know, is giving an important information about how does a multidisciplinary approach could be used to tackle global issues. And we can educate the coming generations by understanding this concept so that they would become active researcher and take up, you know, science as a career to pursue. So that's the kind of smart sensing we talk about, you know. Remember, you know, normally you guys would ride a two-wheeler or so. Let's say, suppose you insert the key and start the scooty, etc. The moment you touch the accelerator, the speedometer would display that, hi Ganesh, good morning. Today your blood pressure level is this much and your sugar is under control. You are allowed to drive. That's the kind of smart sensing we talk about, you know. So in order to tackle the global issues and to come up with such kind of advanced smart materials and smart sensing system, we do need a multidisciplinary group effort. Okay. And finally, I would like to thank you all for your patience listening. And again, I would like to thank both, you know, our director, madam, and Dr. Angappan, coordinator of this GKSA program, for providing me an opportunity to share with you guys what I work on and to share the ideas. Thank you very much. I would be happy to answer any questions or queries you may have. Thank you. Shall I come out of my...
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
I will come out of my presentation so that if you want to ask any questions, queries, you can ask.
Thank you, Ganesh madam, for your wonderful presentation,
madam. Would you be able to see me? Of course, the voice of me looks like a lady's voice. Probably when you listen first, probably you would see. I can hear a lot of people are saying madam, but it's okay. It doesn't matter. I am Ganesh, by the way. Okay. Yeah. So if you have any questions or queries, you can ask. I would be happy to answer. Okay. Any questions or queries or comments?
Sir?
Yeah, please.
Audible, sir?
Yeah, you are audible. Please go ahead. Yeah,
yes,
please ask question. Yeah.
I am Janardhan Achulu, PGT chemistry working at Kendriya Vidyalaya, Kanchanbag, Hyderabad.
Okay. Very good.
Sir, I had a doubt.
Please, sir.
That is all.
Your voice is feeble, but it doesn't matter. You can go on. Go on. Please ask. Yeah.
Or when we are using the glucometer, so I came to know that that is what my understanding level is. I think blood to test the sugar level of the blood, so it will work on the pH, calculating the pH values. But if they are using the electrochemical sensors,
yes,
if they are using the electrochemical sensors, then I think not required the blood sample also. That is directly when we are touching the sensor, automatically it should calculate our blood sugar level and any other levels.
Okay. I understand your question. Yeah, please.
Yes, please. Yes, sir.
You want to comment on anything? Yeah, I understand your question. Right now, I can argue by saying that the change in pH need not necessarily come from glucose alone. You know, there are many biochemical reactions which occur in our body. I can understand you can get a correlation of change in pH to glucose level. That is one aspect. But if you want to specifically say that glucose is the one your target is, then you need to adapt an enzymatic approach, which could be a viable and specific one. I hope you understand the point, right? Because the pH change can also come from any other parameter change, especially in case of sorry. Yeah. So to bring in selectivity or specificity, it is always better to use a kind of target-based enzymatic approach. That will provide clear-cut information. Rather than going through an indirect route of measuring a pH, that will lead to changing pH. I am not saying no, but it may not be an accurate and direct correlation with glucose is not advisable. I hope I answer your question.
Thank you, sir. In the last concluding part, sir, you said that, okay, the sensors, electrochemical sensors that come, that's yes, Mr. So-and-so, your glucose level is this much, blood pressure is there. That means we hope that that also will come in the future. That is innovation.
Absolutely. Yes. It is already in the process. There are people who work on, even our group also focusing on developing flexible electrodes for multi-analyte sensing. It will certainly reach. Yes. Correct.
Maybe there, yes, sir. Maybe there in the break or anywhere, that is, which will touch our body, automatically it will give the responses.
Absolutely, sir. Yes.
There
are what is called self-powered biosensor. When you jump, you can generate energy. When you run, you can generate energy. Of course, when I talk about energy, it's not like battery or fuel cell what we normally think about in terms of megawatt or watt power density. What we generate using running or jumping or sweating is of the order of only microwatt to milliwatt, small power devices, so that you can use for small power requirements. So that's the kind of concept. Yes, we are developing. Yes, good.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
I am from Delhi. Exactly, I have no doubt exactly. I want to know the thing related to your presentation.
Yeah, please.
My question is related
Madam, I think you have some internet disconnectivity. Your voice is breaking. It is not continuous. Could you please repeat the question again? Could you please repeat question. I cannot hear. Or if anyone, yeah, please, sir. I think someone is raising the hand. Sir, please.
Ma'am.
You can.
Ma'am, can I ask one question?
Yes, yes, please.
Ma'am, actually, you told very nicely. We have studied our chemistry some 30 years back. We have been dealing with the Nernst equation, Gibbs free energy, negative. But you have taken us to a very good level, higher level, research level. Sometimes we feel that why did we come to teaching profession? We would have gone for research level. Okay, keeping that aside, madam, my question is that you said that water can be used as a fuel, and these things we have been hearing for almost ever since we are students. But when we expect in a country like India, if water is used as energy and we can run our vehicles with water, it will be the greatest tribute to Sir C.V. Raman, Dr. Radhakrishnan, and all those people, madam. Thank you, madam. Please, thank you.
Okay, okay. I understand your question. Yes, I can answer this question. I also understand this a comment, but let me express my viewpoint. Okay, the hearing of water can be used as a fuel is conceptually I explained, but there are many catalysts which evolves for this water splitting reaction. It is not just based on the catalyst alone. We need to go back and look at the engine itself. So far, what we use is like IC engines and what we studied in Carnot cycle, etc. That same thing we are keep on following even now. That's why, if you agree with me, yes, Prime Minister Ji is proposing, Atmanirbhar Bharat, so that we can change the fundamental concepts itself. Going from a classical book-based definition of developing this to make in India product, absolutely we need to change from fuel cell concept to engine to drive vehicle, etc. Having said that, there are prototype model the companies are also working on. I'm sure soon it will be demonstrated and we will have vehicle. Now the mentality of both the students as well as researchers and the company people are also changing. So it is not just the science or the concept alone. That has to be built up further with other policy making issues as well. I'm sure we will see the revolution. Okay, so hope that's my opinion.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Your lecture is excellent, sir. Excellent, your lecture. Very nice.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah.
Ganesh, sir, I have a question. I am A. Bharati from Kendriya Vidyalaya, Warangal, sir.
Please.
Sir, your especially that lipopolysaccharide in relation to knowing the person's immunity level, the person who is on the verge of, say, having met an accident and likely to be revived. Madam, sorry, sir, now in COVID times, there is often a discussion on immunity, how far is immune system, what food is to be taken. So do we have any such kind of sensors or materials to know our immune levels? How far are we? Or we need to take
Sir, my question is also same with this same जो मैम अभी पूछ रहे हैं, exactly same. My question is the same.
समझ सकता हूँ मैम. Yes, I can understand. Yeah. Now, the idea is, yes, it is a good question and very relevant to what we feel nowadays. Yes, now, in fact, even our group also slightly moving away from our normal activity of developing sensor to sensors related to COVID. As you know, people have advised to take many, immunity booster, I would say. But how do we know that up to what level we are immune to this kind of virus or microbes, etc.? So there are many different approaches being adapted to this immunity level checking. There are systems that can tell you like there are systems that can tell you that whether you are prone to such kind of disease, but there are no clear-cut sensors to predict your immunity level as of now. Okay, when do we worry about immunity is whenever we get some disease or some illness, you want to know whether you are immune or you are undergoing some treatment. Okay, so to answer your question straightforward, there is no sensor for directly measuring the immunity level, but people are working on developing such kind of answer, sensor even in our group, and there are many other universities even across the globe. They are focusing on developing such kind of sensor now, because till now we did not worry about it. You do know that, right? Till now we don't worry about whether we are immune or we are healthy. Once we feel feverish or illness, we go to a doctor and simply take a tablet or medicine, and we feel that next day you are okay with that, right? But now yeah, because we did not had such kind of pandemic over a decade, over a century, I would say. See, the COVID has basically revolutionized our thinking as a whole. Imagine, you cannot touch a person, you cannot handshake a person, you cannot, eat happily with a group. Such kind of restriction we never faced earlier. So now only we started worrying about immunity. So to answer your question straightforward, there is no sensor for measuring the immunity level as of now, but people are working. It will come out in near future, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you, madam. It was very interesting. The session was very interesting, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello,
Thank you,
madam.
ma'am. Thanks for your kind words. Yeah.
Hello, madam. Hello, madam.
Yeah, please, sir, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yes.
Please.
Myself Vidya Kishore, PGT Physics, KV Janakpuri, and I am teaching class 11th and 12th for last 32 years. And my simple question is that my simple question is that so many students can ask me these days whatever may be the type of vehicle, and all vehicles are running with the help of the fuel. So how is it possible to run that vehicle with the help of water? Just I want to ask you a very simple question. So many students can ask me, and even this type of question. How is it possible to run any type of vehicle with the help of water? Here the water acts as a fuel or not? So what the basic difference here? What the special type of chemical reaction is going to take place in that? That's why I want to know from you. How is it possible to run the vehicle with the help of the water?
Sir, could you please repeat your question again? Initially, you were very clear, but during the course of time, I think the voice was breaking.
Okay.
Could you please repeat again the final part of the one?
Yes, I am repeating the question. So many students can ask me, how is it possible to run any type of vehicle and with the help of water? Here the water acts as a fuel or not?
ATM. What is that again? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, आप please repeat करेंगे? मुझे सुन नहीं रहा है. There is some disturbance. Could you please repeat again? Sorry.
No, my question is that so many students can ask me how is it possible to run any type of vehicle with the help of water? So how is it possible?
Okay.
My question is that water acts as a fuel or not?
Yes, absolutely, yes. I understand your question. Thanks for repeating. Yes.
Okay.
I answered this a while ago. Someone else was also asking a similar question. We have been hearing this, like water could be used as a fuel ever since our childhood, but there are no vehicles, there are no cars which are actually run by fuel cells, right? Or water-based fuels. Now, I was trying to explain based on the concept wise. Yes, thermodynamically, the water splitting reaction is an uphill task. It is not allowed. It is forbidden. And even now, the engine what we have in our vehicles, two-wheeler, are all like IC's internal combustion engine. And we do still follow the Carnot cycle, what we have studied in our olden days, right? Now,
Okay.
suppose if you want to use water as a fuel to drive vehicle, how do we overcome the thermodynamic barrier? That's the thing I was trying to highlight during my lecture. Now, if you overcome the thermodynamic barrier, yes, by applying a voltage, you can split water into hydrogen and oxygen, so that both could be used as a fuel. In order to employ this water as a fuel, recall we both hydrogen and fuel, hydrogen and oxygen, both are prone to induce accident as well. You need to have a storage tank for hydrogen and the oxygen, and we need to completely change the engine configuration itself so that you can design a vehicle with water. Having said that, now even companies are also working on, and the companies as a whole, they will look for what's the cost when they have the cars which are run by petrol or diesel, and if we use hydrogen and oxygen as a fuel from water, what would be the estimated cost? So that's the kind of balance sheet companies are looking at. But research-wise, there are, I hope you understand my point. But having said that, that's why I mentioned our Honorable Prime Minister Ji is also initiating what is called Atmanirbhar Bharat, so that Make in India product can come up to tune as a whole industry itself, so that you develop a vehicle on our own and which could be cost effective. That's the idea. I hope you understand the answer.
Research is going on. I know. So in future there is some possibility to run any type of vehicle with the help of water as well as wind energy also and solar energy also. There should be some alternate source of energy.
Absolutely. And there are people, they already have a prototype model. So we do have a vehicle here. We run with a normal fuel cell system. It is not directly from water, but we use a fuel cell to drive vehicle instead of battery. We do have such kind of prototype models, fuel cell based vehicles. Yes.
Okay. Thanks a lot, madam. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, madam.
So,
excuse me, sir.
Yeah, please.
We'll wind up the program for lunch, madam.
Maybe we should wind up because you have another lecture at 2, right?
Yes, madam.
Maybe one last question. Yeah.
One last question, sir. Sir, water is totally incompressible, and compressible fuel is very helpful to both the vehicles, or you can use as a fuel. But how the water can compressible?
So yes, water acids will not split. You need to apply a small potential, or like 1.23 volt is the thermodynamic potential, at which if you apply 1.23 volt using 2 electrodes in water medium, then you would see that hydrogen evolves at cathode and oxygen evolves at anode. So when this liberation of hydrogen and oxygen, we need to trap so that both could be used as a fuel. Yes, as such, water cannot be used directly as a fuel. You need to ignite. You need to initiate the water splitting by applying a small voltage to that system.
Madam, last 1 minute, madam.
बाहर में ना करा हमने कहा हमारा तो आपको तो इतना बड़ा पालन नहीं बात करा मैंने ठीक है ये बेटा यही काम करना
सर I could not get
भी कर लेना कोई दिक्कत नहीं
मैडम
वैसे मैंने पांडे को कर दिया है कोई दिक्कत नहीं करेगा
मैडम
I guess I mentioned okay. Shall we wind up, sir?
ठीक है बेटा कोई बात वैसे मैंने कहा दिया
1 minute, madam.
We'll wind up, madam. Again, 2 o'clock we have another session.
Okay. So thanks for your time.
1 second, madam. May I? 1 second.
Yeah, I am not a madam. By the way, I thought you were talking with someone else. Anyway.
Ganesh sir, your class is excellent. Your class is excellent. I am getting retired in this December, madam. As a very senior most teacher, I propose the vote of thanks for your fantastic lecture, sir. Fantastic lecture, excellent, superb. No adjective will, all adjectives I can use, madam. Excellent lecture.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks for your compliment and kind words. Thank you.
This December, I am getting retired, madam. I feel myself as a senior most teacher among all the teachers. So I propose vote of thanks. Thank you,
Please.
sir. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot,
I'm
madam. Thanks a lot.
From
Thank you.
Kendriya
Thank you.
Vidyalaya, Machilipatnam, Andhra Pradesh.
Thanks a lot, madam.
Thank you,
madam.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Ganesh
Okay,
sir.
thanks a lot, madam. Thanks a lot.